Hello, dear audience. Hello, dear spectators. For us to wrap up the festival experience. Day in this final conversation, we're about to have a very good one, but before, so please check it out if you haven't done it yet. Then there's also the opportunity to watch all of our content, all of our conversation that we had online with our directors, with the representatives of the human rights watchdog organizations, of the representatives of the international filmmaking community, and even more so at our YouTube channel and at our Facebook. They're all recorded, they're all ready for your usage, so please don't be afraid to check out all of the content that we've generated throughout the 7 days. But today we're going to have the final installations of the soup with filmmakers, so please make yourself very comfortable because we're going to go on a very interesting journey today. We wanted to discuss, like originally the plan for us for this final soup with filmmakers would have been to discuss the patterns of the future, because currently we all live in this fragile and frustrating times. No one knows what's going to be happening tomorrow, not to say that no one knows what's going to be happening in a year. There's this new reality of pandemic going on all over the world, and there's the new reality of reviewing and rethinking of your own values, of maybe sometimes even thinking of what it is to be human and what it is to live in the human civilization that we have. What are the flows, what are the benefits of the lifestyle that we used to have, and what can be the future for all of us. And if you remember, the main topic of our festival has been the teen spirit, and we really wanted to also take a closer look at the future generations coming and what is going to be happening in the future for all of us. So that was the main idea behind today's conversation. We wanted to discuss future and different patterns and different ways the way future can represent itself. It's always a funny situation when you're talking about future in present, and I do believe we'll all enjoy watching this conversation recorded in like a couple of years and trying to figure out whether we write about something or no. But before we got to that, I would like to introduce you today's guest that we have, and to be honest, he has already become popular among the Ukrainian documentary filmmakers circles. Because there has been a lot of reactions on his film Newtopia, still available at docuspace.org. From the filmmakers, from the audience, I have seen at least 7 posts mentioning Newtopia in my line, in my feed on Facebook. I can imagine what is happening in other feeds. But please welcome the director of the film Newtopia, that is in our competition program Docu World, Audun Amundsen. Audun, hi.
Thank you. Hi.
It's a pleasure to have you here once again. This is going to be already the 2nd time that you're joining our online studio from your home office in Trondheim. So thank you very much for making it, connection between Ukraine and Norway. And considering Newtopia, I believe we're about to make a different journey, not only from Ukraine, Norway, but also to the deepest jungles of Indonesia, and into the depth reflection on a different culture. We should have been joined, I have to mention it by now, it should have been also joined by another director, by the director of the Joe Line film, Liza Mandela, but unfortunately she couldn't make it here today, so we're going to have this hour for Audun Amundsen and for myself. So please, dear audience, dear spectators, if you have any questions, and I know that you should have some by now, don't feel afraid to ask those questions. You can do that in the comment sessions at the Facebook broadcasting and at our YouTube broadcasting. So please join the conversation. This is the last day of the broadcast. This is the high time to do that. So Audun, I will start with like the most general question for our final day. So how does it feel to be a part of an online festival?
Well, I'm great actually. I'm excited to talk to you guys and share more inside information about my film. It's a great opportunity, and I'd like to thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
We're looking forward to that too, because your film has already, from the very first people who have seen it at DocuSpace.org, it has already generated a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of interesting discussions. To start with, that you have been making the film for quite a long period of time, and it wasn't only your filmmaking experience, but maybe that has been even more of a personal experience. You lived through the life that you have shown the audience. How did it feel like for you to be working on this project for such a long period of time? And how did it feel for you being, you know, a person and being a filmmaker? Because we can even see these doubts that you have and those stepping outs of the role, being a person and being a director, being the person who lives through the experience and trying to think of what is going to make it into your film all the time in the film, especially at the very beginning of it. So how did it felt for you, living through the experience and making a film?
Wow. It's been such a ride, you know. It's been like high ups and high or low lows. So it's really been this roller coaster trip, and but in the end now, as I see the film myself, I have started to appreciate the film myself actually, and I'm really happy that the main character in the film also appreciates the film, and I can see that he's proud of it, and that means a lot to me. So in the end, I feel really happy about it. But even though this is a film, and for me, it's more than a film, because it's my life project. It's how I have lived my life, and I will always keep in touch with the people in the film. And it's like my soul is half Indonesian, right? I'm going to Indonesia every year, and now I'm just wondering when I can go there again. So it's been very strange journey in many ways, because it's been many obstacles as well, and also the fact that I felt this paradox of me being there as since I wanted them originally to experience this fairy tale world that I thought it was them living in harmony with nature, and I see this changing, and I felt like I'm also having this impact on them in the direction I don't want them to go in, but then in the end I realized as well, it's not me actually who is really having the deep impact. It's the surrounding people from all over Indonesia moving to this island and trying to get them into the money-making society, and also the government. They want them to modernize and move into villages, adapt to the modern world. And these are the big influencers. So I've struggled a bit with this in the beginning, but I kind of managed to find my position in the whole journey.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to ask, because, you know, from the very beginning of the film, as we follow, if I may say, like, you know, your character and your protagonist, Amundsen, we're basically, we still see it from the point of view of the Western person. You know, we all have our assumptions of what the life in the jungle is. And I just wanted to ask you, because like we see that in the film, and the moments when you're, for example, noticing that there's a hell lot of plastic is being used in the jungle, even though they're still preserved their connection with nature. But there are some things that are really slightly disappointing from this picture of, you know, paradise-like unity with nature. You have been working there, like you have lived there at your first journey, as far as like we understand, learned from the film, for more than 2 years. Were there just moments when you just wanted to let it all go, when you felt that you're too, like your impact is too much for this community, or you were like really disappointed with what you see from the directorial point of view? You're not depicturing this paradise of nature. Were there moments when you wanted to let go, and when you wanted to come back to Norway to normal life, or no?
Yeah, for sure. I had several moments where I was considering to just leave everything behind and just go. But then again, like I said, I also realized that it's not really what I was doing there that impacted them in a deep way, because what's really impacting them is the people around them, other Indonesians, and also multinational companies trying to get their forest. Indonesia is huge on palm oil plantations. Luckily, in Mentawai, in this area, it hasn't happened yet. But so these things are the real impacts on these people, and I realized that I can be a source for information, and I think my presence there has also made them even more proud of their own culture and their way of life, because yeah, they have made me realize certain things about my life, and I have made them realize certain things about their life, I think. So we have learned a lot from each other, and it would be a very different case if I were to stay there for, let's say, 3 months or something and just film a documentary, or even 1 year, and I was coming and going just to make my footage. It would be a totally different thing. But I've actually made this effort to learn their language and try to understand what they are thinking and how they're living their life, and I felt their way of living their life on my own body, so I know how it feels like. So I think our relationship, it goes beyond this film. It's and Amundsen, when I speak to him, I spoke to him on the phone because I know I can actually call him, and I spoke to him a bit over a week ago, and I'm always happy to talk to him, and I'm interested in how he's doing.
Have you been to Norway or no? Because you have discussed it in the end of the film, flying straight from Indonesia, then back to Norway. Have it been like, had the dream come true or no?
No, he hasn't been to Norway yet. Hopefully it can happen at some point. I know he is curious as well about how my life is, because he cannot really relate or understand to how I'm living my life, and it would be interesting for him to see, because and also he's like, how is my mother, and they're very family related. Family is important, so he's asking about these things, and he wants to make a if I'm going to get married, and he will wed me off in Mentawai and make a big ceremony and stuff. So yeah, family is very important for Amundsen. Yeah.
And speaking about the family, I was also interested because we're having this, like the main topic of our discussion was titled as, the future, the design of the future right now. And we see that there is a story about Amundsen's children. And we see his son, who was supposed to be father on the heir of the land and the heir of the house, he's now going to school. That's the moment when we leave him. So what's happening with his children now? Like, what future does he see for his children now?
Yep. So these are some of the things that's really changing, and Amundsen change in this way as well. in the beginning, like people can see in the film, that he wants his son to follow in his footsteps and inherit his land and live a life like he has done for, or like they've done for generations and generations for thousands of years. And now he wants to do everything he can to let his son go to school. And this costs money as well. So he needs to earn money. And actually, Amundsen himself has actually now got the papers from going the what is called primary school. So so he took a primary school himself to learn. I think about 2 years ago now, and he wants to make it so that his son has choices in life and not stepped on by the outsiders all the time and things like this. But he also worries about this, because if he goes to school and he chooses another life, let's say he moves into Padang or get a job or something like that, the land that Amundsen has, it will go to someone else. Maybe someone else in the clan picks up the land, or maybe it will be lost in a way, this culture and the land, which I think Amundsen would be really sad about this. So it's difficult to combine the two, because when it comes to economy and things, it's very difficult to get that living in the jungle.
And slightly talking about economies, what was the biggest revelation for you living in a jungle? Because again, coming from the Western society, you might have had some assumptions about what the life in the jungle would look like. And like from the very beginning of the film, we see this young guy who is full of hopes and full of anticipation to live in the jungle, romantically going through the river and waiting for something new to happen to him. And there is slightly changing throughout the film, and I do believe throughout the time that you have lived in the jungle. And right now, there was this popular movement, the downshifting movement, when people from the Western societies and Western economies, they really wanted to live the so-called simple life, getting closer to nature, and also have some assumptions about how that would look like. So how did it feel for you, and what was the biggest revelation for you at that point, when you have started living in the jungle for a longer time?
Yeah, this I think is a really interesting question. It's something that I think about a lot, because now we're coming into what we can actually learn from indigenous cultures. One of the biggest revelations I had was when they were making their sagu palm tree into edible food. And when I asked them how many days this process were taking to grate up one big palm tree, so we were working with this for about 10 days, and this the amount of food, storageable food that we got from that was lasting for about a year for the whole family, including big parties for the whole clan. So that's pretty good economy. Working 10 days and you have your main food source ready for about a year, right? That's really good economy. And when it comes to how much they were working in Mentawai, I would say, and now we're talking what we would label as labor. I mean, we got to do something, and if you define it as work or whatever, but this I'm talking about labor, and they were doing this for about 3 hours a day in an average, I would say. So they have a lot of free time, and then after 3 hours a day, they have done all their chores to keep up the society. And this I also think is really impressive. And let's say if let's talk a little bit about how their economy is working, because they do have an elaborate system, economic system. It's not based on money. So what is the assets they're having? It's their livestock and the land and trees and natural materials. Maybe they are making baskets from lianas or stuff like this, and canoes, houses, and such. So they also have really good houses and good transports. They have all these infrastructures. But what I was going to say is that let's say if Amundsen wants to build a house, and he takes in some clan members to help him, and he pays them with livestock and maybe coconut trees or something like this, and of course then his livestock go down, and but he gets a house. So the time for him to actually come up to the original level with his livestock takes a much shorter time than it takes for instance, people in Norway to pay off their house mortgage. Yeah,
that's a good comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's also something that's really good. And another thing is that I realized they do have an intricate system of economy. Let's say the big durian trees, it's a fruit tree, and they can trade these trees, for instance, when they are going to get help for making a house, or maybe there's a wedding ceremony or something like this, and they are trading this tree, which is worth a lot. It can be seen like the stocks, the equivalent of stocks in the economic market. But this tree can pass on to other clans, and maybe even after 20 years, it goes back to the original owner, right? And what is interesting with this, that all of the things you see in nature are being traded within the clans, and the stuff they are trading has some kind of limit to it. How big can this tree get? How many fruits does this tree manage to grow? And everything has a limit. But you have different sizes on trees, you have different types of trees, you have different types of animals, and they trade all this, and everything has a value. But the interesting thing is that it has a limit. And the feeling that we have now in our modern economic system, it is limitless. Because we have put the society on steroids. Yeah, we are kind of pushing the limit all the time, and we have lost control. We are not able to control this system anymore. And I think if we have something to learn, we can try to implement some of the principles they are having in their economy, that we need healthy limit to our economy, and also the way they are producing things, because they are also forming the landscape and growing things, and it's permaculture like lifestyle, because they are partial hunter-gatherers. So they are growing some stuff as well, but they are also hunting and things like this. But they are working with nature, and not trying to manipulate nature in a way that it gets destroyed.
That's an interesting
But
thing, but because like I wanted to ask you about again this elaborate system of economy that they have, because even in your film, even throughout the film, we see how the money getting introduced into the system, and money being something that has to be supported by something material, because like without it, money is just paper. But do you believe, because money brings additional technology, like for example, you can buy a chainsaw. If you have money, you cannot, like for example, exchange a chainsaw on livestock or something else. Or with money, you can buy the engine for your motorboat. And it's also changing the landscape, and it changes the economical relationship inside of this society. And it has been seen even in your film, like for example, Amundsen getting a new house, which is a completely different than the one that he used to live before. And do you believe that this introduction of technology will also change the way they have, the relationship that they have inside of their community? Because we have seen it in the Western societies, like starting with the invention of the light and electricity that has changed the labor cycle and the day cycle of work and life for every human. And I'm just interested in that because I'm an old school Marshall McLuhan adept and Marshall McLuhan fan who believes that any kind of technology is good for the people, but still every technology should be consumed responsibly. And in this case, for this kind of traditional society, it causes a little bit more of a threat. Sometimes because the traditional societies, they're much easily accepting all of the new technological development. They don't have this time, for example, for like as we had in Ukraine, for example, from this transition from 90s to 2000s, when we first had the landline phones, then we got the first mobile phones with huge batteries that only the rich people could afford, and getting back to this, which is something that everyone has. And it really took time for us to get used to that, to update to that. When people in traditional society got introduced with technology, it kind of fascinates them, but they accept it much faster, and it really reshapes their reality. So how do you believe, like, has it changed their reality and their balance with life, with nature, and how they did with traditional practices? Or they have just, intertwined the traditional practices with new technologies?
It's a really complex question, and also it's parts of it that I've been able to capture during the course of my film. This tremendous paradigm shift in culture, and then the thing is that a lot of the stuff we are consuming in the Western world are kind of short-sighted, endorphin kick-driven stuff that are made to trigger our emotional impulse. Like now you get a like from someone, or you have a red symbol on your phone that says you have a message and you have to check it. For instance, we saw that in the village near Amapaksa, a salesman was selling Monsanto products so that he could grow or eradicate grass to make crops better or easier. So things are moving faster and faster and faster. And then in this process, what's happening is that the people living a traditional life are having the chance to take control over nature. So the power balance between nature and people are shifting. And of course, because the Amapaksa and the clans, they are used to nature winning over them, because they're not used to being able to control nature in the way that we are doing. And now they are getting this opportunity, and of course they want to control nature, because nature is also a huge resistance to them. It's can be very difficult to live in the jungle, and I lived there for myself for such a long time and felt the really impact on my body. And I do understand why if they get the chance to control nature in a much bigger way, I do understand why they want to do it. But then there's not really any people to let them know about the implications of this. So let's say in these small villages that the government are putting up to relocate the clans, when they are starting to use modern accessories to process things, or maybe they're using fertilizers, machines to speed up things, and maybe health conditions and hygienic measures are also starting to get better, and they are still producing the same amount of children, and maybe more children are surviving, and the population goes up, and then you need more food again, and then this process is accelerating. And when it comes to birth control is not something that's discussed there, also because the people surrounding them are usually deeply religious people, either Catholics or Muslims, and they don't they're basically against birth control, but it should be done, I think, to control the population, so it's continues to be sustainable, because in many ways they are also implementing these modern accessories that they're getting into their traditional ways. Mm-hmm. So now, instead of grating up a big sago palm tree with these old tools, they are using, for instance, a cheap Chinese motor to do it for them. And that's okay. I mean, that they can implement modern technologies into their way of life, but the results of that can also be destructive. I mean, but the culture is changing, and I guess in a way it's okay. Cultures will change, and will also appear new kind of cultures in the future. But I realize that the most important thing is that we preserve the forest and the nature. Mm-hmm. And if we're not doing that, then we are really in a bad position.
Yeah, in a dipshit. But there is a question from our audience also, who are asking basically, in your opinion now, again, having this experience that you've had, and you're the person who has the opportunity to speak on that, do you believe that the Western civilization should help to improve the life of this kind of tribes and to help to civilize them, to say the least, or whether their life should stay authentic? So should the Western civilization intervene into this life or no? Like, we know that it's an inevitable process. Fortunately or unfortunately, the civilization still will come, but in what way it should be? Because throughout the human history, we had a lot of examples when civilization just gone wrong. And in your opinion now, having this point of view from both of the worlds?
Yeah, very, very interesting question. Like all of these questions, they're complex answers, I think. I've been thinking a lot about this as well, because and I think it depends, because you have various groups of indigenous peoples all around the world, and they are impacted by the modern society on various levels. I mean, there are a few tribes in the world that haven't had contact with the outside world. Yeah. There are some in Amazon and some in Papua New Guinea. So I think when it comes to the tribes that haven't had contact yet, I think we should be very cautious to to contact them unless we have managed to control our own systems, because we are not. Because what are we presenting to indigenous peoples? I mean, usually it ends up in exploitation, cutting their forest, mining, palm oil plantations, or basically things that are not really going to move them forward. But if we manage to implement and teach them systems from the modern world that are possible to implement and work and adapt with their environment, I think it could be a good thing. Mm-hmm. If we are aligned with our sciences, with our things that we have been studying and figured out. Because as of now, what we are presenting to them is not even aligned with our own science, with the best science that we figured out. It's just something we present to them because we want to earn money. So it's an economy not for people, but an economy for money. So if we are still having this attitude, I think we should stay away. Mm-hmm. But in the case of the people I've been staying with, they have been slowly affected by the society surrounding them. A lot of people from the other parts of Indonesia are moving to this island to search for a better life, buy land from the Mentawais and try to start trading with them. And also the government want to go through basically the same process that we did in Norway with our Sami people. They want to modernize them, and they've been cutting their hair off, and they've been trying to, make these people modern. And this is and also missionaries and things like this. And I don't think this is a process that's going to end up well for Amapaksa and the clans, because they are basically just ending up as the poorest class of people in Indonesia, going from being a very rich culture, very rich people in the first place, and that's very sad to see. So that's what I was trying to do, trying to inform, trying to give this good technology that can be working with them. So that's also why I thought that the solar panels could be a good thing to implement to them.
Speaking slightly about this future coming, basically, and this concept of civilizing the tribes or civilizing the traditional cultures, introducing them to new technologies, do you believe that this kind of informed and conscious technology using that will be aligned with science, like you just said, is it possible that it will happen right now? Because the whole world is now on stall. Basically, we're all isolated. We're all cut out from all of the things that we've used to take for granted, the so-called civilized world. And we're now starting to slightly reconsider the lives that we've had, and we're slightly, like at the very beginning of all of those quarantine regimes and all of the isolations, there were a lot of discussions on getting a second look on this natural households, on having the natural economy and getting it closer to this exchange models and stuff. But do you believe that something might change in this course of this pandemic? Not very significant, but do you believe that the people's values can change and their approach to, understanding civilization, being informed and conscious consumers?
I really, really, really hope so. From what I've seen, for instance, in Mentawai, people are, or traditionally they have been living a sustainable way with nature, but they haven't been fully aware that they are actually living sustainably, because they haven't really thought about it. They're just doing it. But now that it's changing, it can go really bad because they are not used to thinking about it. When it comes to us, we are aware of what we're doing, but we are still continuing. So hopefully this situation means that now we are realizing that our awareness has to be aligned with what we are actually doing.
Results with actions.
But that's,
yes.
yeah, so maybe that will happen. But then again, considering our human nature and the way that the economy works for the collective masses, it's hard to say. I think it could be that our economy is going down, and then when things are getting repaired, a lot of people will be in desperation or in desperate situations, and big companies are eager to boost their revenues once again, and maybe we will just go crazy and bam, we're up there, and we will see like a huge peak of economic activities to boost the economy, and then it will move a little bit down again to stabilize. But hopefully we will be able to not do that, but I suspect this is what's going to happen. But if we are clever about this, I think we should just use this as way to or time to think about what we're doing, and realize that now is the time where we are implementing the science that we have actually acquired during all these years, and live in accordance to that.
Mm-hmm. Like this is, I believe, this is an important issue for all of us now. But then again, understanding human nature, what are the chances that humankind will not fuck up this time? I mean, like, I have strong faith in humans, but I still believe that there is, there's so many other external factors that we should consider in that, and there is this frustration about the unknown. No one to say expected of the situation that's happening. No one knows what's going to be ending up with that. But back to the film, we have another question from our spectator, Irina Haluk. She first of all just wanted to compliment the documentary because the documentary impressed her really. Like, she has been thinking about it for the whole week and it's like still in her head. And she's really grateful for you for sharing these experiences and raising all of those important questions in the documentary. And we slightly touched those important issues right now, but there is the question about the filming process and your relationship with the main protagonist, with Amundsen also. Because in the end of the film, and Irina also points it out, that in the end of the film you're saying that all of the conflicts and misunderstanding are behind and the only thing that is left is love. And Irina is wondering, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what kind of conflicts and what kind of misunderstanding there have been between you and Amundsen during the filming process.
Yeah. Of course, coming there in the first place, or if I go back to 2004, people were relatively unaware of cameras and television shows and filmmaking and stuff like this. So, and I didn't have a camera as well. I had a small digital camera. That's the footage you see in the beginning of the film. And then when I came back about 4 years after, there had been like a boom in television companies coming to the island, doing their stuff, and commanding the people around and bringing big kineflows and making beautiful footage and telling them to remove all possessions that they had acquired from the outside and make them look as primitive as possible and stuff like this. And some people, some families were enriched by this, also skewing the social structures a little bit. Most people didn't understand what was used to, what they were going to do with the footage or anything. People coming there, they didn't really care about the people. They were just caring about the show that they were going to make, and they were driven by deadlines and stuff like this. So when I came back and I brought a camera, a lot of the clans saw me as this video guy. You know, I was going to film them and earn money on their culture and but this impression changed after they got to know that I didn't have any time limitations. I was going to stay for a long time, and I wanted to really learn what they were all about, and also I learned their language. So my position quite quickly changed with that. But I think when I stayed, the times when I was in the jungle, I really enjoyed the times with Amundsen the most. When we were roaming the jungle for fruits and stuff, and we were living secluded from all the other stuff going on this in the social villages, the villages where the government wants to bring these people to live out from the jungle. And when I came down there, now it's like a feeling of desperation. They realize that they cannot close this gap between them, between us and them, like they're saying. And this created also a problem because people were wondering if I was enriching the family of Amundsen, and Amundsen didn't said that no, he's not giving, and then people were accusing him of being greedy and not sharing, and then Amundsen were kind of saying that I didn't give anything to him, so he didn't have anything to share. So this balance between giving and taking needed to be established. I didn't want to be there just living off them, right? So I wanted to contribute something as well, and I did that because I knew that the local school, they didn't have any light. I helped them installing light to the school. I think it's important for them to be able to participate in education, although the curriculum or the stuff that they are being taught is not always aligned with what they should be taught living in the jungle, because they, but that's a different story. Where was I?
What were the other sources of maybe challenges in your relationship with Amundsen? Because I do understand this balance between other people seeing that you have spent a lot of time with that, and other people believing that the tourists are the main sources of any kind of benefits by that point of view, and I can understand that. But were there any other things, like was it really disturbing for him, for example, maybe, but did your presence maybe sometimes felt disturbing for him?
Well, I felt really accepted and taken care of. They're so considerate and open for me, really. I mean, sometimes I probably was bothering, like I said what I was thinking, like if I thought they were rude, if they asked me things that or they wanted stuff and they just asked straight out, can you give me this, or and I would say if I thought it was rude. So I was honest. If I was angry, I became angry, and I think this is also a part of why I grew so close to them, because they realized that, okay, so I'm not pretending to satisfy them because I want something from them. Like if I was an anthropologist or a filmmaker, you would just okay, give them those cigarettes so they're keeping their mouths shut and I can continue my thing. You know, I would rather say say no if I felt like this is not appropriate. Yeah, because I didn't want to have this feeling that I was bribing them to just do what I wanted them to do. I just wanted them to continue their way of life that we're doing. So I wasn't really disturbing them, or I never said to them like, do this, stand here, oh, you gotta shut your mouth because it's coming sound on my microphone and now I'm talking to this guy or filming this guy. No, I didn't do that, and I think this is how I could continue filming, because I had this honesty about it. And if my film turned to shit because of that, then yeah, so be it. Yeah, I didn't have any deadlines, so I didn't really care about that. And I think this is one of the things that made us close, and why Amundsen considers me his son, you know.
Wow.
And he refers to me as the brother of his children. So we have grown close together, and the film is a side aspect of that.
I have a question to you. Like we haven't got a lot of time left. We have around like 5 minutes to wrap it up, but there's still some questions that I really wanted to ask you. And there's a very important moment that you have just noticed about your film turning to shit, because I understand that you have a lot of footage made throughout those years. And the first question is like, how many hours of footage you actually have? How long did the editing process take you? And because like we remember you had some like assumptions, and I do believe that you had in the back of your mind some kind of creative idea how this film will look like when you went there in the first place. And there's definitely been a completely different person with a completely different story in mind when you got back and you had all of this footage, all of this material. Yeah. And I do believe that from that person from the very first point, what you've had in the end would look like a shitty film, but you've managed to do the film that fascinates people and, you know, gets their attention. Like one of the spectators that said that she is fascinated by it for a week already. So how did you manage to do that? The editing process, how many hours of footage you have, and what did you felt when you understand that it's a completely different film than you've been hoping to make?
We have too short time, but okay.
So 4 minutes.
Okay, about 400 hours of film, and I was logging and also editing a lot of this material in Mentawai with solar panels, and also in Padang later on I was editing it. So I sorted the material and made 2 rough cuts that I picked out situations and so that I would remember the story. And this went a totally different way than I was planning to in the first place. So I just ditched all my plans and let this journey just form itself while it was going on. And then the important aspects of that was not having any time restraints. So if something didn't go as I planned, or I saw a situation that, oh, this situation can be nice and this can fit into something there, and then the outcome of that situation wasn't as I expected, or maybe we were interrupted, or maybe I had to wait another week before we were doing the same thing, you know. So I could sometimes sew together situations that were about the same thing, but they were being done on different times. And this is also nice because the environment we were in is not changing, and also they were basically wearing the same clothes. So very often I can combine footage from one kind of situation, but it's actually taking place on different time. And then when I came back to Norway, I started editing with a brilliant editor here in Trondheim. His name is Anders Teigen, and we were sitting day out, day in for about 4 months. We had a lot of interesting discussions, and of course he didn't understand what they were saying, so I had to translate all of the stuff. And the fact that I had these 2 rough cuts and sorted the material, it made the process easier for us. So that was important. And then we started trying to aligning the footage and the story together with the vision that I had formed during all these years. Yeah.
Wow. Another question also slightly connected to that. Should we expect for the second part of the film to come up? Because basically we have seen your intervention into jungle, and we might expect Amund Baksa's intervention into Norway, and it would be quite interesting to see what he feels about it. Remember, in one of the moments of the film, the shot that you have left in the film, he says that he doesn't quite clearly understand the intentions, why are you doing what you're doing. And I do believe that it will be interesting to see his reactions and his feelings about the completely different system of life. So should we expect the part 2?
It could be part 2. I'm like I said, I will always stay in touch with them, and I would like to talk about some other perspectives that I haven't covered in this film. So yeah, it could happen.
Could it
And
happen
I'm
for
open-
your
open.
marriage? Because basically we have, I was serious when I've said about the huge fan base that has been established here in Ukraine, and I also have this a lot of smaller and not to say that much connected to the film questions, but the fan base demands them to be asked. But still again, there is also has been a question on Facebook asking you whether you would like to turn to the fiction cinema, or you still would like to stick to documentary filmmaking, or basically what is your further plan for your creative life?
Well, actually, the original idea that I had when I was starting Newtopia, I wanted to make a split release with a book and a film. So I'm thinking about writing, but I also have some film projects that I'm planning now. I have another documentary as well. I will probably stay within the documentary filmmaking, but when it comes to writing, I will probably move more into fiction.
So it's going
But
to
I
be
think
a fiction story based on your experience in Indonesia.
I hope so, because there are so many different truths and so many complexities that cannot be talked about or shown with a film. When it comes to the written word in books, it can be it's more accurate, and it can be shown in a different way. So I think a combination of the two could be great.
Well, I hope you'll find a good publisher, because I do believe that it will be a very interesting book for all of us to read, and it will be an interesting way to compare what have you shown us as the author, you know, as director, what have you shown us in a documentary film, and it would be interesting to read what will you show us and how will you guide us through this story as a writer. So I do hope that you will find a good publisher, and I do hope that we'll have an opportunity to translate it into Ukrainian for all of our people also to be able to read that. There is the final question, which can only be possible on Sunday, on the final day of festival, not really connected to the film at all, but that really bothers a lot of our audiences for the whole week also. What air conditioner are you using? Like what conditioner are you using for your hair? Yeah. What hair conditioner do you use for your hair? Because everyone is fascinated by your haircut now, and it is the question that bothers everyone.
I will take up my hair.
Like, you know, I also have like wavy hair, but it's like terrible. So this is the question that is important for everyone. Hair conditioner.
Hair conditioner. I don't. No special hair conditioner.
Okay, the magic is broken.
It's just naturally like this.
Okay, Audun, thank you very much. Thank you very much for bringing Newtopia to DocuDice UA. I do hope that there's a lot of people who are going to enjoy this film. It's still available on docuspace.org for 7 more days up till the 10th of May. Thank you very much for joining us in this live conversation. It has been a big pleasure, and I do hope that the people will follow you later on. I know you're very active in both of your personal sites and in Facebook and in YouTube. So dear Ukrainian audience, he actually has recorded a specially dedicated video for you, like telling the story behind the film and what has happened in between those years while he got back to Norway from Indonesia. So please check it out. It's also available on his YouTube channel. And while you're there spending time on YouTube, please share with all of your friends the recording of this video. You can come back to it anytime possible. So please stay with us, enjoy the content of DocuDays UA. If you really like what you see, please donate. It will be a greatest pleasure for us just to know that our work is needed and our work hasn't been done in vain. Thank you very much for being with us. This has been the final Soup with Filmmakers for today. Thank you, Audun. Thank you for allocating this time for us. We hope to see you in Ukraine someday, hopefully next year.